they don't want to keep you. But if you speak Korean fluently, if you know the drinking culture, eating culture, like oppa, 언니, 형, 누나 culture really well, they want to keep you, they like you. So I think speaking fluent Korean is still a prerequisite to getting a job that's not teaching English in Korea. Like really hundreds of thousands of people coming to Korea to start teaching English and then eventually graduate from teaching English to do something that's their true passion. But in that process, I think the deciding factor is whether you can actually learn fluent Korean within 2 years or 3 years that you're there. So people who are in charge of hiring, they have a really hard time because everybody's photos are perfect because everything has been photoshopped, and everybody's CV is perfect because they kind of plan it out like that. The moment they enter university, their older friends or their professors, they advise them to do this, this, and that. At least do 1 year of volunteer activity, at least do 6 months of study abroad program somewhere, ideally an English-speaking country. So everybody does that. So everybody goes to these big companies looking for fresh college graduates with perfect resumes. So what can actually differentiate good people from good hires from bad hires? What would you do if you were the person in charge of hiring the best candidate for this one particular job? Yes, and what do you think is the most common element that everybody thought would be different? Abroad? Voluntary work, everybody does that. Personality, everybody says that they have good personalities. Everybody does that. So that's a problem. So the only differentiating factor is English. It's crazy. You will notice that when you start working in Korea, if you go there to live. So many banks, bank tellers, they have to submit their TOEIC scores. What are the chances of a bank teller or an accountant speaking or having to speak English with a customer if they are on the 3rd floor of this bank? You only go to the 1st floor. Or if you're in charge of loans, what are the chances of you having to speak English to anyone in your entire lifetime or career? 0. And this applies to many other jobs in Korea. Everybody's looking for the one person that speaks the best English out of all the applicants. So I know it sucks, but it is happening right now. And yeah, you see a lot of K-pop songs and K-pop artists adding some English, not because they want to communicate with global fans. If that was the case, they would use proper English, right? because of this steep economic growth and people's tendency to make sure that their kids have good lives, and people's tendency to think that, if someone speaks English, they must be smarter, they must be more competent. Now people have kind of developed this unique sense of superiority in terms of languages. If you have something written in Hangul, that can be pretty, or that's possible to be ugly. But if it's written in English, I don't care what it says. It's just English. My mom, I don't think she has that kind of, oh my god, English is really the perfect language. She doesn't have that. She doesn't care about English. She doesn't know any English. But she is also a regular customer. She would just pick up anything that is inexpensive in a shop, and she's not the one to design her t-shirts. So she picked up some random t-shirts from t-shirt shops. And then one day I went back home to visit my parents, and thankfully she was wearing it only at home. It said, juror, jury members, juror, run away from murderer. And I was like, Mom, do you know what it says? She's like, I don't know, I don't care. but a lot of designers, it's everywhere. It's deeply rooted in the Korean society. Designers think English font is cool. You go to places like Paris Baguette, you see random French words that make no sense. Question?
I've been to Korea like 2 years ago.
Yes.
And I try to speak English to people, but they don't really know how to communicate.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Yes and no. There are many social experiment videos on YouTube if you go to look for some of those things. J.K. Out is a good YouTube channel. I'm doing a thing next week with him. He does a lot of social experiments where he pretends to he's Korean. He's just spent a lot of time in New Zealand, I think, or Canada. So he pretends to be a foreigner who doesn't speak any Korean. He does that, and always, surprisingly, so many people actually speak good English. So maybe going back to that, I'll answer that. A lot of people are so conscious of what other people think because English is not a part of their culture yet, but something that people judge other people on. Okay, so what's your score? What's your score? What's your score? So that is, I wouldn't say it's always negative, but it's deeply rooted. I will give you that. And another interesting thing is, because of I talked about it in a video, I talked in Korean, but you might have watched it, some of you. The oppa, 언니, 누나, 형 culture is beautiful, I think, because if you are 언니 to someone, 누나 to someone, oppa to someone, you take care of them and you are like treating them like family members and you pay for their lunch, you pay for their taxi rides. But then also that has a negative effect on people's mindset because once somebody's 언니 to you, she's 언니 to you forever until you die. So someone whose English is better than you is someone whose English is better than you forever. So it's a closed mindset. So maybe if you speak to someone in English and they can't respond to you, please pay attention to whether this person was with someone or not. When you talk to a Korean person in English and this person is by himself, by herself, the chances of them speaking better English increase. If they are with a friend, the chances of them speaking English decrease because they don't want to be judged by their best friend on English because to them English is still a test in everyday life. Yes. Okay, things are a little different. When I was in high school, I did go to school 7 days a week. So the extreme case was in my third year in high school because back then, now, luckily, the Korean SAT, which happens only once a year, once in your entire life, now it's a deciding factor only, I guess, 60% of the time. You can have other means of entering a good university. But back when I was a high school student, a third year high school student, high school graduate to be, it was 99% of the time. So if you got sick the day before the test and you couldn't concentrate on the 7-hour test, 7-hour test. You start at 9 a.m. and you finish at around 4:30. Yes.
Do you make the test for one subject?
So mainly 4 subjects: Korean, English, and humanities, like social studies.
But is it all mixed up?
4 categories. So you take the Korean test for 80 minutes, you take a break for 15 minutes, and you take the English test for 60 minutes. You take the social studies and you take the science studies, including mathematics and physics. So that's one day. If you got sick on the day before the test, which I actually did, you can't concentrate and you ruin the test, what do? You take the test again next year.